Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on a Sunday night. It's a real commitment to fashion. I'm very impressed. But it's very apt to be committed to fashion because we're talking about Givenchy, which is obviously an incredible house with an incredible designer at the helm at the moment. And to match that, I have an incredible set of panellists with me who will introduce themselves.
I am Camilla Johnson-Hill. I run a production company called The Production Club, and I produce fashion shoots for Bottega Veneta, Jimmy Choo, Sunday Night Frame, and many others, Ferragamo and the Pirelli calendar.
Oh.
So what I'm working on
That woke us all up.
Yeah. I'm Oriole Cullen, and I'm a curator for fashion and textiles at the Victoria and Albert Museum.
I'm Celestine Cooney. I'm a stylist and fashion director of the biannual Twin.
Before we started, we were all doing that little sort of crash course in the history of Givenchy and talking about how interesting it is because it's a fascinating house. Let's talk a bit about Givenchy, where it's at now, where it's been, the high moments, the low moments. That low moment. Give us a little quick history. A quick history.
We were just saying that we can't believe that Hubert actually just left in '95. It seems
so recently.
So recent.
And but kind of such a mega house as well. It feels so recent compared to all the others too. You know.
Yeah, and then in very quick succession.
Yeah.
You know, sort of several designers. I think, obviously Galliano came in after Hubert de Givenchy retired, but we were just saying he was so short. Right? Yeah, not even.
I mean, fleeting. He must have barely moved the stuff into the office before he had to leave again.
And then it was McQueen and then Julian MacDonald. So before Riccardo Tisci. So
and out of Galliano, McQueen, and Julian MacDonald, where do you think the fit was right, or do you think it hasn't quite been there until Riccardo came in?
I think McQueen made sense. And I think Riccardo makes sense.
I'm not sure Julian MacDonald made that much sense. I don't understand really where the house was going at that point, and I actually don't really remember many of the shows or much of the clothes.
I don't even know if I feel like Galliano as such makes that much sense to me either.
Do you think that's because we've got the benefit of oversight, we associate it so much?
Yeah, I think that is. Yeah, it is probably.
And I think it was very exciting at the time when he came in. Everybody was sort of really, it was sort of a breath of fresh air, a new thing. But
he's so vivacious too. But his woman, I feel, is not so much, in my mind, like his Givenchy woman.
Let's talk about the Givenchy woman because it's interesting. Because for me, I have two distinct ideas. I have that kind of old, the cliche Audrey Hepburn type view, but then I also have, and you kept saying the word warrior when we were talking about Riccardo, which is my impression of the modern Givenchy woman, with her nose ring and her amazing sort of...
It's quite tribal, I find, like the woman, and it's always it's a very powerful female.
How do those two, because Audrey is obviously a powerful female as well, do you think that's what runs through, is the idea of strong women? What's the
There is femininity there. There is the femininity, but it's always like a powerful femininity. It's like there's strength in it.
And I think that idea of the muse maybe is what links the two, because they are very different, obviously looking, but Givenchy himself, really Audrey Hepburn is so important to him. I mean, even to the point where he hired a house model who looked exactly like Audrey Hepburn, and they continued their sort of collaboration throughout her life. And of course, as we were saying with Riccardo Tisci, with people like Maria Carla Buscono and Lea T, and that sort of Sierra visions of femininity, that he has this very sort of close group of people that he really looks to and references.
I think the modern Givenchy woman, much like the modern woman, has so many layers to her. Yeah. And there's so much. I think you have to, the modern Givenchy woman, you have to really look at her.
I think it is the layers.
Yeah, you have to really look closely and really kind of analyse what she stands for, and almost like when someone speaks quite softly, you have to kind of lean in to hear what they're saying. I feel it's Riccardo's Givenchy woman is quite like that, but with the basis of an Audrey Hepburn kind of...
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Feel.
I don't think you have to be big or brash or, to be strong. I think, like, if you have that, especially like that female power, it's it's quite quiet, actually. It's quite a quiet strength. And like I was reading, like we were saying about him having 8 sisters, and I was thinking he probably has a very strong mother.
And deeply religious as well.
The religious thing, obviously.
Which is key.
I love
Catholic
that anyway.
Do you? He's a complex designer, but it is still very much. I wouldn't say you look at the clothes and think it's conceptual. Like I know that word gets bandied around with what he does a lot, but it does seem complex, but without being overly sort of there's still a real simplicity to it and an accessibility, I think, as well. You know, people, and it can be showy in a way that
I think there's a romance to it. I just realised I had my head tilted to one side. But I do think there is a romance to what he does, even when it's quite hard. I think there's a romance there.
We were talking just before about how a lot of people were saying that the last collection was much more feminine. And
with the ruffles, and I was like, a bit S&M. It was like,
when you've seen them worn, they don't look feminine. Like when you've seen them worn on the red carpet, they don't look very feminine at all. I think it's because people are probably tired. It was Paris. They'd run out of words.
There is a little bit of an androgyny there. I think there is a little bit of an androgyny there, especially with pre-fall. And everyone's like, oh, after all the ruffles, he went really tomboy, really masculine. And I think they're still the same to me. Whether there's ruffles or whether there's tailoring, still kind of feels the same.
Let's talk about some of the original Givenchy shapes, or I'm going to come to you to
Thank God.
Tell us a bit about the kind of the shapes and the styles that were synonymous with the earliest sort of stages of the house.
It's interesting because he had quite a checkered career before he set up his own house. He started with Jacques Fat, went on to Piguet, and then went to Lalonde, and then ended up running the Schiaparelli boutique for 4 years. It's quite an unusual sort of hopping and trotting around. But he was obsessed with Balenciaga, absolutely, as you know, many people were. And he got to know Balenciaga, and there was this sort of, they had this relationship where when Balenciaga closed his house, he sort of sent his clients over to Givenchy. So I think when you look at the early work, there is that sort of referencing that very much structural look. And he did, you know, I mean, he was amazing with things like accessories and hats and his silhouettes, and he liked the idea of sort of upending a silhouette. So sometimes when you look, you can see he's kind of playing around with that. So I think, and he was somebody who could take that sort of 60s, you know, boxy look and translate it for the couture woman, who at the time it was very different to what was going on with kind of youth fashion and things. But he was very good at sort of manipulating that into something that could sell for couture clients. So I mean, you know, he is interesting, but of course he has this particular woman, and as often happens with a house, as the designer grows older, you know, the signature stays and the clientele sort of stay, and it's not seen as so dynamic. But I think, you know, he was, when he started out, he was seen as kind of the enfant terrible of French fashion. And I wonder how...
All the cool houses started.
Exactly, it's true. So I think Tishy is very interesting, you know, because when he started out as well, everybody was kind of, what's happening, what's going to happen? Is this, you know, there have been a few...
He hasn't always had the most positive reception. I think people think of it as incredibly successful, but you know, as much as people I think are huge fans of his work, it's not always been smooth sailing in how people have received it, which I think is quite akin to what you were saying about.
The whole gothic vibe was a little difficult for clients to take.
Not everyone gets emo. Do you know what I mean? Like I think
the existing clientele probably a bit like.
Do you think in a way for a while it was like a stylist dream, but not like...
Yes, actually, I think,
very good point.
I think about that with some of the earlier stuff that we saw.
I also remember there was that collection. It was as I was saying before, it's this tribal thing. I always feel like those women that come out, they are like an army. It's like they're warriors, all of them, and they're one. You know, they're not like a girl that's just, you know, going to the shops and she's like, you know, it is this army, and they come out each season and they are. It's what they do, you know. But I think there was a collection that he did. It was all of the amazing African prints. Do you remember this? But it was the shoes, it was the leggings, it was the dresses, it was the whole look. And then I think someone had shot it with a giraffe or something. And I was like, that is one of the most, you know, it was kind of, I think you just want to shoot things like that are so visually arresting. And there is, when you break it down, it's wearable. But I think when he puts it on the runway, it's visually so amazing, just as it is.
Talk to me about styling for the runway, because this is something that I actually know nothing about, because obviously I've seen people style knit shoots, but I've never... Tell me how that works.
Styling for the runway, and you mean kind of like breaking it down and putting it on the pages of magazines and stuff?
No, is it if you're styling for a runway show?
Yeah. I think it gives you a little bit more freedom, because that girl is existing in, I suppose, a space that is free of any kind of environment. You know, like it's kind of, you're in...
The most minimal.
Yeah. And I think it allows you to kind of make it a little bit harder and make it a little bit more conceptual or a little bit more extreme. That girl doesn't need to be so accessible. Whereas I think, but that's the way that I would style. Now some people will take something from the runway and they'll push it even further, you know, and they'll make it more extreme. But I think it's nice to be able to break things down, and when you put it on the pages of, let's say, Vogue or something, you see a girl that you could be, or that your sister could be, or, you know, whereas on the runway, I think it's a bit of a different world.
You want it to seem almost alien in a way. And
it's kind of showing them off. It's like, this is going to sound hilarious, but my uncle used to breed cows and sheep, and we used to get them, like they'd be out in the field and they're all like, you know, whatever, and they're just looking kind of real and kind of, you know, lovely. And then you'd take them in and you'd wash them, and you'd put powder in their fleece, and then you'd like rub Vaseline into the nose until they looked like this beautiful, this beautiful creature. I'm talking about cows and sheep, and then I used to show them. So that's kind of what it is. The runway. But they still go back to the field, you know.
No, this is true. And I'm so that was lovely. It's very poetic. And now tell me about your work that you do, because I'm so interested in how a designer will take all their whole vision and encapsulate it into, you know, a campaign, because obviously that's such a huge message for what that season's going to be for that brand.
It's really interesting. When I look at fashion shows, most people are looking at clothes and trends and thinking of the history of the house and all that kind of thing. But what I'm really looking at is where the designer's head is at. And for me, the runway and what they decide to do in the show, so the hair, the makeup, the casting, even the minimal set that they can do. Obviously some designers do bigger sets than others, but I'm really trying to focus, especially for my clients, on where the designer's head is at and therefore where it's going to lead. So for example, last week in Milan I was doing the Bottega Veneta campaign, and so it's like you start by seeing, what I see first is actually the set of the runway, and then I see various pieces of the clothes, but I don't see all of them until the day before the shoot. And then so you're kind of scrambling around trying to kind of get the locations, trying to kind of deal with hair and makeup and deal with the casting, and all the pieces come together right at the final moment when the show happens.
It's so true. When you see that lineup, you're just like, okay, this is what I've been seeing in my head for the last like 2 weeks.
And it's so nice to see where the designer's at, and it's a very, very significant piece of the puzzle, but it is actually quite a small piece, because as we know, not all runways do actually translate into their campaigns. If you think of... Yeah,
I do think it could...
You know, Marc Jacobs, for example, what he does on the runway does not translate into how he sees his campaign.
Do most people try and reflect? Because I mean, you mentioned Bottega Veneta, and you see that real reflection.
Most of my clients, yes, there is a direct reflection, and they do try to. And the show is very much a starting point, so the hair and the makeup and the styling, and obviously there's the commercial aspect of the choosing of the actual product that they shoot. But there's definitely a direct flow from one to the other. But I see, you know, a lot of people are influenced by different things, and they want to show a kind of more a global space where their brand is at, and therefore they really go somewhere different with the campaign. And both are equally as significant and important, but it's really interesting seeing the two.
It's so individual to each designer as well, because like with Marc Jacobs, like you were saying, it's Jürgen. And I bought my friend actually the Marc Jacobs Jürgen book, and it's amazing. Like all of that, but it's all the same. It's
so strong.
It's so strong, and it's a body of work. And I was looking at it going, I could have any of them on my wall. You know what I mean? They're advertising campaigns, you know. But I think that was quite an amazing thing to do, to have it so consistent the whole way through. And then there's other ones. I mean, I think Givenchy's campaigns. Like the gym with the basketball. Suddenly basketballs became so much more desirable. And I was like, what, should I just put one in my house? Should I just get a basketball and like frame it? Put it in a Perspex box? I mean, that's like, Jeff Koons has already done it. But like, there was something about that, you know, and then the German Shepherd and shooting, it was the couture, you know, from the back and from the front. And it's so beautiful from the back, but the dog was in there, you know, and the basketball was in there. Like, that's genius, and it's cool.
I really like the fact that he's been so loyal to Maria Carla. It's like she has been such a strong influence in his shows and in his campaigns, and she's such a kind of stable figure of who his woman is and stands for, and I think it's fantastic. And then he kind of goes a little bit to the side with other casting choices and really gives clear messages as to the fact that he's not sticking to the straight and narrow, but I think the combination of his casting is fantastic.
I think there's a few designers that do that. They have their girl. And she's consistently there, even if she gets older. And we were saying even that about like Alexander Wang. You know, there's those girls and they're consistently there, and it helps the brand to kind of...
Well, it helps it stabilise and find its feet.
It helps people identify with what that girl... I mean, it's just a...
Because you mentioned designers having, like, who work for the Muse, and then I think I'm interested in how that comes through in the work, as opposed to designers who have just designed for fantasy, or, you know, just design with the fabric, you know.
Well, I think Marie Carla has been, you know, since before he was at Givenchy, she's been a real believer in his work, you know, when he was at Centre St. Martin's, I think, from very early on. And
they're obviously super close.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, having that, obviously there's some input.
It's so lucky when a designer finds that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think having that sort of as a sounding board, I think there is an element.
Also hanging out with your, like, best buddy in some nice location. It's pretty good.
I'm rather intrigued by Corinne Rottfeld's influence over him, and I'd love to know kind of exactly how much she does influence him and how much she kind of does bring to the table. And I'd love to be a fly on the wall in those, because she's so incredible and her style's amazing.
She's totally awesome. And I mean, like, I remember her wearing dresses, you know, and like she doesn't care. She's got no brown. Wow. And I'm just like, you look so, like,
she's
hot
she's
and
a
awesome
grandma
and chic.
as well. She's so awesome.
She's a grandma. And I was like, you still look, I don't even mind you not wearing brown. I don't think it's like any less chic. Yeah. She's such an amazing woman, and she has charisma.
I was doing a shoot with her in China with Patrick de Marchelier, and we were shooting in these kind of markets, and we were shooting around this kind of bird, they were selling all these birds and cats in cages, and it was just disgusting. It was just like food market, fish market, and everyth's on the floor, and she's there in her perfect outfit with the high heels, with little satin bows. I was like, wow, I love you.
She's been a great supporter, hasn't she? You know, she really pushed him from early on, when there were sort of mixed reviews and things. She sort of got what he was all about, and really, you know.
What do you think about that, when an editor or a really influential fashion figure will champion and kind of pluck someone and push them
Isabella
forward?
Blow and McQueen and stuff.
McQueen and Philip Tracy. And
but it's difficult when Corinne was working for French Vogue. I think that a lot of the other advertisers found her close relationships with certain designers quite uncomfortable, and they didn't necessarily like that, and they felt that it was a conflict of interest. But I think that Corinne, of all people, has always been very professional at kind of keeping a balance and making sure it doesn't affect the actual content of the editorial. But if
there's
I was
going to be those
Ricardo,
relationships.
And I would choose Corinne if I was a designer. She's amazing.
And it gives them that space that, you know, if you've somebody like that believing in you and pushing you,
also understands it.
It
so what you're getting back is like what you would imagine you would do yourself. You know, when someone can do something that you imagine if you were doing it, that's the way you would do it. Does that make any sense? That's very complicated. But do you know what I mean? Like, I'd say it's the images that he would see himself making, and then she kind of does it for him, and that connection is like very valuable. And that kind of, it's kind of an affinity with someone. That's incredible to have.
Respect, someone who you respect, and you respect their opinion, and you trust them to take your ideas just that little step further. You know, you've put so much time and energy, and it's probably so vulnerable. You know, the whole kind of idea of putting
I don't
your
think it comes
soul
about
into
if
something.
someone is not really passionate and really truly believes in that person.
So
which is kind of beautiful, I think.
I want to, just before we take a look at what he's done for this season, I want to talk a little bit about, you know, we've mentioned certain aspects of his aesthetic and his sort of vibe that we've come to expect. But what would you say as kind of his signatures? What, when you see a Givenchy collection, are you looking for? What do you expect? Is it a mood or is it a particular aesthetic?
It's always that play of the dark and light in a sense, isn't there? Like you were saying there, there's sort of the tribal
the strength
feel.
and the femininity, the vulnerability and the power and
the sweet and the hard.
Yeah, it is. It's really
so the contrast.
The contrast.
So I always just want to see. Like, it's so funny. I don't even know if for me it's about the girl. I just want to see the clothes, which that's what makes me so excited. And I always want everything, even though you know. Yeah, Fire's like really loaded, but like I always just do see the collections and I'm like, wow, I would just, if I could just have my whole wardrobe be that, I'd be happy to kind of like, That would be fine.
Should we have a look at what we've got for this season? And it's an interesting one because we've all got our little cheat sheet here, but they had Anthony Hegarty from Anthony and the Johnsons who performed at the show, but he was also like written a little thing which guests were given, which is called Future Feminism, which is so akin to what we were just talking about this idea of a strong woman. Exactly, and it talks about, you know, women must step forward and start to forge a new way for our species. So it's very kind of passionate,
so epic.
Empowering. Yeah, I know, it's very deep, isn't it? Yeah.
That's epic. That's really
it's a lot for a Sunday night, but we'll so we've got our opening look there, which, given that we were just talking about strong women, having Bambi is somewhat strange. And the more sort of official show notes talked about the idea of combining the strength of the gypsies with the romanticism of the Victorians. And it's Pat McGrath doing the makeup.
And Luigi doing the hair, right?
Hair is cool.
Is that?
It's
kind of like a silly hat?
Because he's worked with Philip Tracy before. I wonder. I don't know if they're.
I don't know who the hats are.
Or if it's hair. If it's hair, it looks like it's kind of like a paste or some kind of a coloured,
solidified curls.
I feel like if he had been working with it, might have been credited.
It would be,
So it must be a hair piece of some kind.
It's fantastic.
Well, it's so dark, you can't really see the textures and the different materials, but it feels like leather. And something meshing.
Yeah.
I'm surprised by the whimsical stuff.
That's so awesome.
And that's going to be the new nose ring. That's going to be the thing that everyone wears and you see absolutely everywhere. We were talking this morning.
He just gets the sweater though.
But we were talking about Kenzo this morning. We were talking about the It jumper. I've just seen this.
I know. But you know the Madonna varsity one from Pre-Fall?
Yeah.
Obsessed. I'm just like, I cannot not have that. It's so awesome. Madonna and varsity, like together.
I'm loving
it's amazing.
The hairpiece, whatever.
Yeah.
It looks like it's some form of material, and then on the cuffs as well. It's quite sweet. There's little high notes.
And that's quite gypsy, you know, that kind of.
This Pepto-Bismol pink, been pretty popular.
This is slightly more whimsical than I would be expecting. You know, that there's something slightly, especially given the purity of last season, to see something that is more.
Yes. The colours were so pure last season.
It was quite minimal last season though.
Yeah.
This feels much more commercial. This feels much more day to night. Like last season, I think
also,
it was
there's
for
been
those
this whole
ruffles.
Kanye thing, you know, like with these sweatshirts, which I'm obsessed with.
Kanye and Kim are there in the front row. Of course they are.
Of course they are. Them and their baby.
And their TV crew.
But that floral, you know, it's not something I'd expect for Givenchy. I wouldn't think I'm going to see a floral.
Interesting photo for it.
It's nice seeing it on quite kind of masculine shapes that, you know, like biker jackets.
The romance is always quite, you know, I think there's always a masculinity to the romance, but the femininity is there. And it's like a million contradictions in the same thing.
But this still feels quite biblical in a sense, you know, this rose, there's still that kind of old romanticism.
That is so beautiful and the colours are amazing.
Yeah.
And the hair has almost gone
It's
neon.
really hard to see where the shapes are.
Oh, that looked like a black puffer jacket because he did that with the men's. They
around
puffer
the
jackets tied around their waist,
Around the waist,
which I'm really into.
What do you think of the
That's
footwear?
very gypsy. Well, like Irish traveller.
What do you think of the footwear?
Black puffer jacket in leather. What did you say?
What do you think of the footwear?
It's kind of like a sock, isn't
Yeah.
it? Sort of,
I'd love to see the heel.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get some pictures of that.
Oh wow!
Getting more literal with the gypsy.
amazing.
Yeah.
And fur, again,
gypsy.
everywhere.
Everyone has gone skirts.
Yeah.
Everyone's gone nuts for fur.
Absolutely
haven't they?
everywhere.
Ours
This
haven't
is
seen
very
her.
different
She
to what
looks
I was
amazing.
expecting.
I never know what
If
to
it
expect.
wasn't for the hair and
I never know
makeup,
what
it
to
could be someone very different. The
Yeah.
hair and the
look at
makeup
this.
is really
Yeah.
keeping the Givenchy stamp at the moment for me.
That feels familiar for Givenchy
Yeah.
though. You know,
Yeah.
he's put in
It's
those
that
bits
kind
to
of,
bring it back.
print.
And, yeah.
Is it
shoes
Trump
are
Royal?
amazing.
Like that kind of...
It's still very strong though, isn't it? Still kind of, which is ironic because they've got this kind of strange like 50s look swim cap on their head, but they still feel like women going into.
I don't know if that's hair.
I can't tell.
I can't tell.
Some of the tweets that I was looking at earlier were saying that it was hair.
See, I actually think it's painted hair,
paint.
which is stronger than some kind of a cap.
Yeah.
Because if it's painted hair, that again is going back to tribal. That is more tribal, and that feels more kind of base, I suppose, than like a swimming cap. That's not very sexy. I don't know. Maybe it is.
I doubt it. Swimming cap.
For me personally,
I think it's
not into swimming.
some form of
hair. Yeah.
How would you how would you love to see this shot? How would you love to see this in a campaign?
I would love to see this in a really, really simple, quite kind of hard environment, but just beautiful, light, soft, and just focusing on the girl. To me, the hair and the makeup is really beautiful in this, and is really kind of actually establishing what the whole of the show is standing for. And so like a concrete floor, just a really kind of hard concrete wall, and beautiful soft lighting.
When you see a collection,
that's the Madonna that's on all of the clutches, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a Madonna, but it's that's the same face. So that's carrying over from something before. Wow, those boots though.
I'm
That
thinking
looks like
about
Burberry check from here.
Yeah,
I was going to be the one that said it, but it does actually look a little bit like Burberry check.
I'm trying to think what the future feminine is about. So what's he trying to say?
I'm presuming that the hair colour is a big deal. It's pink. And red he
There's
uses
gonna be
a lot,
some
but
reference.
the pink is considered like ultimately feminine. It's what you dress your female babies in. You know, so that everyone knows they are a girl.
but he's kind of toying with that, you know, by doing it on the hair, by having the pink in the hair, but a girl clad in, you know, like black sheer with black leather.
She still feels quite punk. I mean, I don't think that feels gentle or soft.
Which is
or
telling
cute.
because he's doing the punk exhibition at the Met.
There we go.
There we are, yeah. And the styling of this does feel a bit more, there's that punky element, you know.
It's a bit more eccentric, isn't it? It's less.
Which is nice to see compared to last season, you know, because last season did feel much more, just much
minimal.
Slicker and
I'm into it. I mean, it's even got a bit of a grunge kind of thing, like with the lengths and with the sweaters and
grunge more than gothic. Which is a fine line.
but it does feel incredibly commercial, this collection, you know, those sweaters, those jackets, like incredibly commercial, but in a really great way, like in a really savvy way.
obviously the target markers.
We're going to blue hair now.
I love the hair. The blue is awesome as well. Such nice, like from pink to red to blue, and the casting's like immaculate.
Talk to me, because I know you've been doing research on some of the models. Talk to me about the girls of the season and who's really stood out.
Most seasons I really try and kind of see what people are doing and what they're doing differently from the season before, and actually no one's really done anything that different. It's been quite kind of predictable and quite similar to spring summer, and you know, a few like Calvin brought in Carolyn Murphy and Prada brought in you know, a couple of kind of the older girls. But
that's been happening for a little bit.
Exactly, it's just one or two, and it's normally because they're kind of courting them
like
for some kind of
the
deal,
men, getting
you know,
all the
somewhere
actors
else.
in as well.
Yeah.
You know, everyone do something a little different. But I actually noticed that this season with Christopher Payne, it was very character casting. There was a bit more of a character there, you know, rather than. I think people aren't afraid to. They don't feel like they just have to use the big girls.
Yeah.
A girl walks in, she's like 5'6", and she puts on something and just like kills it.
Yeah.
But and then you get her a girl who comes in and she's like everything that she should be, and she just doesn't have that power on the runway. You know, and I think people are embracing the character more and
that's completely
inner
exploded
strength.
in the menswear. Like so many of the London men's shows, it was all, you know, street cast, all character cast. So it's more, in a way, after seeing that for the London men's and then seeing the women's straight after, you know, it kind of felt a bit. Character cast, there's something about it. It makes you want the clothes. You get it more.
I think the thing is that at the moment in campaigns, you're either doing models or celebrities, and I think that when a designer is opting for a model, they actually want a model who's relatively kind of
to bring to the table.
or someone who actually is totally unrecognisable. So it's just the body. To make a direct, kind of like a total kind of difference from the celebrity-driven campaigns. And I think it's a shame that no one's doing anything kind of that different in the big names.
What would you like to see?
Well, I kind of like seeing kind of different shapes and sizes and different kind of characters and strength in their faces.
I think that's more kind of on the high street though.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Lava.
Lava
have had kind of like, you know, much older and I mean, I do love when little Albert comes out. The dance. I was like, you little dumpling.
But I do think that for something like Givenchy, if you started kind of playing around too much with the casting. It would just kind of be so many different layers of what's going on.
Yeah,
and I think that here, that the clothes have a lot. There's the hair and makeup is very significant, and actually just really beautiful girls that wear the clothes well and walk well.
They're strong
is
girls.
fantastic.
They are the stronger girls.
We've got to give a nod to the British girls in the shows at the moment. Cara leading the way, Edie Campbell.
Cara, Edie, Rosie Tapner, and
Sam
Robinson.
They're doing, doing so well. And
what do you think of that kind of model become celebrity? So Cara, if you go on...
Well, she's so Instagram friendly, Cara. Yeah. It's like her life is just one big picture.
I remember meeting Cara years ago, before, God, I was about, years ago, maybe like 2 years ago. But anyway, I remember her coming in and that energy.
Oh, she's so great.
It was like having a sparkler in my hand. I was like, whoa.
Why does a girl like that just take off? Because we had Jessica.
Because she has that magic. She has that energy, and she's this personality, and it's so nice to see. People love that. And she's beautiful. She's grown very beautiful.
Yeah, she's incredibly beautiful. She's so versatile. She can do punk just as easily as she can do.
That's what's amazing in Love this season.
Beauty.
She did beauty with nothing. She didn't need clothes. She didn't need anything. That face. She did beauty, and you can do that.
She has so much personality. She's an absolute joy to photograph. Every photographer I know who's worked with her, it's just like so easy.
Yeah.
And it's just so kind of enjoyable. And I think that there are models who aren't quite so easy to photograph.
It's like Agnes. Do you remember like Agnes?
Yeah.
The girls who have, and Agnes is like just so amazing as a person.
So many of the big
soulful,
girls.
and it's so nice, I think, for people to be able to engage with that and
to actually feed off it. So with someone like Cara, just like Kate, it's like Kate Moss, you get so much back, and it's like the muse and the designer. It's
very
like
much
you're creating a picture and you want something fantastic to happen, and with girls like that it does happen, and they give as much as you do as the photographer. So it's such a joy to have them on set.
I'm really conscious that I'm really grilling you, but it's really nice to have a different sort of industry take. But I want to get actually all of your opinions on this idea of a great fashion campaign. And I was wondering if you guys had any favourites. Because obviously Givenchy do amazing campaigns, but over the history there are some fabulous ones. So it's quite a good show to be talking about.
I know my favourites.
My favourites. God, all my clients, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
So shall I list them? I love what Bottega do. They are a client, but I do love what Bottega do, the way they actually bring in a non-fashion photographer.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
He's so talented.
The most recent campain, the one with Freya and Baptiste, is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, wait till you see the new one.
Oh, really?
It's even better. Can't reveal anything, of course.
Smug, but it's
so beautiful.
It's great.
I'm exhausted from it, but it's so beautiful.
Worth it.
Do you have any favourites, Oriole?
I think, just going back to Givenchy, I love the surfboard campaign.
For me, I was like, I just want to be.
It was brilliant.
Giselle, I want to be all those guys and the dogs, and they're surfing. And she's wearing those amazing pink pants, and her legs are so amazing. I was just like, I want to be that girl.
And it's not what it's absolutely, you don't put Riccardo Tisci with surfing on a beach. It was just brilliant. It's so dark and just strong.
He did it his way. That was the other one I was going to say.
You want to be that girl.
And Daria.
You want to be Daria in any campaign she does. But
and Daria loves a bit of surfing, and maybe there's a bit of nature, getting in the waves, putting on a bit of couture.
I love seeing a picture.
Being able to be that versatile, maybe.
I love seeing a picture, whether it's an ad or an editorial, actually, that you haven't seen before. It's like I feel like there's so many.
Lanvin do some really fun campaigns.
Do some brilliant campaigns, and I love their little
videos
that they do.
The girls with the hair.
Yeah.
So awesome. And then obviously it's like Raquel, they use the cool girls, and it's just like, that's just rad.
But it's hard to produce. I guess it's so hard to produce something new. So hard. So much fashion imagery feels really familiar.
Yeah,
you got to be really brave.
Influenced by,
and some people can't afford to be that brave, maybe. And some people can, and they go there, and then some people can, and they just don't. But I think the cooler kind of brands, maybe, like Balenciaga. Incredible campaigns. Actually, amazing. God, I don't know how I could not have said that. Their campaigns are so awesome.
But it was funny. We did an interview with Jonathan Anderson recently, and he was looking through all of the old Versace catalogues for his work at
Yeah,
Versus.
he's been loving them
Oh
on
my God,
Instagram.
they're
I've been seeing them all. I'm like, they're so good.
He absolutely loves it.
So
With
good.
every page, he was just opening it and naming the designer's campaign, and it was bizarre. It was like the weirdest moment I've had. 'Cause it just was like the Balenciaga campaign, next page, different campaign. It's so, and you realise, this like the cog. It's so easy to forget stuff as well because we see it so comes around in seasons. It's very easy to.
Like Comme des Garçons, like when they did like the Dove. I still think of that campaign, and I find it quite moving. It was a bird, like it was a dove, but it was so beautiful just because of the symbolism of it all. But also, it wasn't even any clothes in it. It was like a dove, international symbol for peace. It's an animal, beauty, nature. Like that is everything encompassed in like one really simple image that doesn't even have clothes in it. That's powerful.
Should we see some more clothes on the comment of clothes?
Oh my God.
Let's go back to Givenchy.
See, this is like seriously grunge.
But it's interesting
Except
to
it's
see.
like bright.
We're so used to seeing that on, a tank top or a jacket. Like that print, I feel like I've seen that 1,000 times before for sale
Not on a
as Givenchy,
skirt,
but not
as
on a
long,
gypsy skirt.
Yeah, not as a long skirt. Fur. Purple.
Yeah, we've gone to blue to purple.
Yeah. Pink, red, blue, purple. What good colours. They're colours he's used before.
It's interesting because you naturally think black and white when you think Givenchy in a way, which is strange because you do get a lot of the Baroque prints, and it's interesting that while everyone else is doing black and white, obviously there's a lot of black in this. He's done this kind of peppy floral print, that you wouldn't.
And that fire, the colour in that is like flames, like that gypsy skirt, like it's.
Yeah.
But also he's used the hair to bring colour into the and to I suppose emphasise the colours he's used, and there's colours on all the shoes too, and then the prints, which is kind of.
Wow,
The orange is so good, and that sweater's amazing.
Oh, look, that's only new. Oh, that one dress in.
Wow. That's really gypsy again. It's kind of like.
Do you think there's anything to be said about the fact they didn't show couture this season and whether he's,
using this as...
Yeah, do you think, is that reading too much into things? What did you guys think when the announcement was made that they weren't going to show the couture?
I think it was a shame.
You never really know. I'm always so excited to see.
Yeah, and
his couture
so
is always
good.
my favourite. I can say that hands down.
Yeah.
I think it's a real shame that they didn't. It's such a theatrical moment, and it's such an important moment in a fashion house.
I'm always just curious about why.
Yeah.
Financial? Is it just...
But also,
is he,
I think he...
with someone like...
I think people are really pushed at the moment with so many collections and things, and I think to have couture on top of that is...
Because he got resort and pre-form now, and that's 100% work. There is no break there.
And there's so much time that you have to spend, I suppose, on a couture collection as opposed to the others.
Yeah, completely.
It's a different mindset. A lot of designers say.
I wonder if there's an element of... I feel like it had been pushed to the point where, everyone thought it was so brilliant, and it was effectively, it was 11 dresses. And I do wonder if it got to that point where they were like, how can we take this further? I don't know if that sounds... I think it
keep on doing that because...
I think it's
really good
brilliant to go out on a high though, because
still
we'll remember that and be like, oh my God, it was incredible. And it's still obviously going to be produced. It's not like it's just not being shown. So I think it's really interesting that, I don't know, I think it's quite savvy in a way, because we'll be so nostalgic.
A season time out. Next season.
Yeah, that's my theory.
Maybe that's it though. Sometimes, when I think about like Phoebe Philo going to have her baby, it's like, obviously he's not going to go and have a baby, but maybe he just wants to go on holidays.
He's just chilling out.
He's just going to go to Tulum for a couple of weeks.
Oh wow, that's great.
This is cool.
That's beautiful, the transparency.
Yeah.
I love the way he does sheer
Oh
though,
my
because it
God,
never
he
feels
does
amazing.
sheer
I'm
so
obsessed
well,
with
doesn't
green at the
he?
minute as well. Maria Carla as well.
Incredible.
She looks good with everything, doesn't she? Purple hair.
She's
Not a problem.
amazing, yeah. She is. And Natalia.
Oh, Natalia.
I like the way there's so many different...
Apparently she ran the Paris Marathon this morning. No, I saw that on Twitter.
What?
Apparently.
Natalia is a
She's
bit of a
there.
Wonder Woman though, isn't she? She's so active with charity, and she's got all of her babies, which she had,
Yeah.
Should we give him a little clap? He's so cute. We have to give him a round of applause.
Yay!
So what do you guys think? What's your gut to the
I
collection?
thought that was really beautiful. I think the hair is absolutely incredible and really gives it its identity, that gives the whole show its identity. I think there's lots of really beautiful fabrics and textures, and they've mixed together as a whole really well. And I think the gypsy influence is obvious, and I like a lot of I like that last set of sweaters that had a little bit of a space age feel to them.
The prints.
Yeah.
But it's great because it's not, you couldn't have predicted that.
No, you couldn't.
But
That's what I love, being so unpredictable.
Yeah, but you can
it's still that girl.
Yeah.
But you just don't know what's going to come next. That's what's like so cool. Yeah, I loved it.
There's
real romance.
Real
romance. I
Yeah.
felt really. There was a real romance there. That wasn't that the woman wasn't like, she didn't feel like she was a battle.
She didn't feel as aloof as usual.
No, she's having a little bit of downtime. Maybe.
There we go.
A little bit of downtime.
You've got
we're making such links.
There was romance there, and there was less trousers, and there was less tailoring, and it was more skirts and dresses and
a bit of flow, I think.
and then like the big sweater, which is kind of gives to me a sense of kind of big relaxing.
There was a comfort to this, I think.
There's
There's
a real comfort to it, like, and very wearable too. I mean,
there's one thing I want to
lots
touch
of
on, which
pieces
we
of
mentioned at the start, which I was really interested because we all said, when the original designer of the house is still alive, and how that affects.
he goes back to his inspirations every season, pretty much.
Do you think? But I think it must be so hard to show under someone else's name, knowing that they will see your work. Like, obviously, a good example of when that works really was Valentino.
Playing someone in a film.
When
they're still alive. And they meet up with them and they're like, right, so I'm going to play you. That's big.
But I think there's also a break.
I really care what you think. You're going to come to the premiere and I hope you don't hate me. So I think maybe that's like Ricardo and Emma. They're just like...
But I think also that break too, that there was Galliano McQueen and Julian MacDonald. I think he started from the very beginning because at that stage, Monsieur Givenchy had been in the background a bit, and so I think in a sense it was clear for him to do something.
Also, at that moment, he had such a clear vision of what his goal
He's very
was
much
about.
made it his own. I mean, he very much made it his own. And I love that he does go back to maybe a picture that we talked about, or an actress that he was madly in love with. Or it is so nice that he references it back, but it's always done with a modern take, and that is Ricardo, and the freshness and the youth and his observation. It's always done with that.
So
and I'm sure Umber can see that. Like.
Do you think Mr. Givenchy would be proud this season then?
I think so.
It's actually quite modern. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, whoa, because he's kind of old school and this is kind of grunge, and that's like, how does he feel about it? But it's so beautiful. It's been done so beautifully. I don't see how he couldn't.
Should we give him another round of applause to wrap things up? Thanks, guys.
Thank you.